Hey everybody, welcome to Final Film Productions. Today we talk about Batman, and today, instead of talking about the Batman, I'm going to kind of talk about a pretty controversial subject, which is the reaction and the legacy of The Dark Knight Rises, which was Christopher Nolan's third Batman film and his final Batman film, and was released in 2012. It's interesting because the Dark Knight Rises was a big hit. According to Box Office Mojo, it made more than the Dark Knight it made in the box office. Now, digital sales, DVD sales, all that type of stuff. I know the Dark Knight since then has become a more enduring film to fans, and that's kind of what I was wanting to talk about, because I've always loved The Dark Knight Rises. It's got a bad rap from certain people online, and sort of is seen as the lesser of the three movies. I know a lot of people still like it, but they just have issues with it. But some people, I think it's become quite derided, and kind of it's seen as a bad sequel, which is, to me, is an insane statement, because I think it's a terrific film. And I actually, which may piss off a lot of people, but I actually rank it: The Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, then The Dark Knight. And of course, I'm not saying I don't like The Dark Knight, but I always found The Dark Knight Rises to be a much more rewatchable film, and I sort of enjoy it for some reason. I find it much more rewatchable than The Dark Knight, which is interesting because it seems to be The Dark Knight that's the most rewatched by people. I know Batman Begins is kind of growing, and it's the admiration for Batman Begins is growing as well. To me, I think The Batman Begins is, even though I think it ends a little bit ropey, or it loses a little bit of steam, I think it's a terrific first 2/3 that make it probably my favorite Batman movie. I haven't seen the new The Batman movie made by Matt Reeves. It's getting insanely good reviews. Well, it's getting very good reviews, and that's kind of what I want to touch on. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, now if you know me, Rotten Tomatoes is not something that I go on too much. I mean, if a film gets 10% Rotten Tomatoes, it wouldn't put me off seeing it, and if a film gets 100% Rotten Tomatoes, it wouldn't make me want to see it. We've got The Batman now. It's got 363 reviews. This is critic reviews, so it's up to whether you take critic reviews as being a very important thing to look at. But it's interesting to look at it, because the Batman, it seems at the moment online, has a very I know it's early, but it seems to have a very positive, a very kind of overwhelmingly positive reaction from fans. I guess the past few DC Batman movies that have featured Batman have been a little bit up and down and very mixed, with Justice League and the Batman vs Superman. But the Batman's got an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's 363 reviews. And I wanted to compare that to the Dark Knight Rises, which has more reviews, and it's on an 87. I know these are different movies, but it is interesting to compare a movie like The Dark Knight Rises, which is supposedly a lesser Batman movie, because certain people, and I think it's a fair statement to suggest there's been a kind of a, not at the level of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is another movie I enjoyed that's got a bad rap online, but I feel every time they bring up every time somebody online, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Twitter tweets, Dark Knight Rises always seems to be brought up with an asterisk, as if it wasn't that great. I'll go in a second why I think it's such a great movie, but it's interesting to look at the reviews. Now, the reviews may change, and the Batman may go up slightly or down slightly, but at the moment, The Dark Knight Rises, with more reviews, slightly more reviews, has a better rating. Audience scores are the same at the moment, but The Dark Knight Rises obviously has more audience ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, because more people have seen it over the years, so that's hard to gauge at the moment. But it's interesting, how will the perception of the Batman continue, or how will it be in the next few years? Because you don't really know when a movie's out. There's a lot of people who haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of people that have seen it, and they sort of, their reaction to the movie and the box office isn't a great way to compare. It isn't a great way to gauge whether the movie has worked or his work to the extent that it's going to be a classic in a couple of years, because The Dark Knight Rises made more money at the box office, as I said earlier, than The Dark Knight. But anyway, I wanted to bring up why I like The Dark Knight Rises and why, is it better than The Batman? I haven't seen The Batman yet, so I'm not going to talk about that yet. I mean, I think it's hard to compare them, I guess, even if you did see both of them, because The Dark Knight Rises has a lot of character. We know about these characters beforehand. I know people will say, well, Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, all these characters are known anyway, but we know the actors. We know Christian Bale, we know Michael Caine, we know Gary Oldman, and there is a already kind of built up trust and admiration and emotional attachment in the movies, which Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz and all these actors wouldn't have. Our admiration, our interest, and kind of connection to these actors aren't there just yet. But there'll be more movies, of course. But to me, The Dark Knight Rises. You go down at the cast. You look at the set pieces, the action, that opening plane destruction heist scene or kidnapping. I don't know what you call that plane scene. But, that scene was mostly done with very little CGI. I'm not 100% sure if it's completely without CGI, but I know they dismantled that plane for real, which is amazing, because we all know movies, especially Marvel movies, are very much everything's green screen these days. Very little is done for real. Green screen, blue screen. And it's Christopher Nolan's always the type of guy that CGI is only done when he absolutely has to, and when he think it would be much better to use it that way. He loves to do things real. He loves real sets, real backgrounds, real locations. And for me, that's a big, big plus when watching a movie. Christian Bale, I mean, who's the best Batman? I know that's a question people have been asking over the last few weeks. To me, Christian Bale is my favorite. Love Michael Keaton too as Batman. But Christian Bale, I think there's such a depth to him. I think he's brooding, but not in a sort of not in a kind of forced way. There's a lot of these brooding kind of anti-heroes and performances that you get in movies where somebody's acting brooding. And I don't know about Robert Pattinson because I haven't seen the movie yet. But I think Christian Bale has a lot of depth. He's a great actor. Has a little bits of sense of humor sprinkled in, make him even more likable. And I think his performance over the three movies really are terrific. And it's going to be hard to top him, but hopefully Robert Pattinson seems to be getting good reaction from fans. I like the way in The Dark Knight Rises they build to Batman's return. I mean, I think it nearly takes 45 minutes. I could be wrong on the numbers. But about that, for Batman to actually get in a suit in the movie, which is a pretty amazing thing. I mean, you look back at the old days of Joel Schumacher, even Tim Burton Batman movies. I know they're different movies, different script, different stories, but there would have been a pressure, I'm sure, to get, or I feel like some of those movies there would have been a pressure to get Batman in the Batsuit as quick as possible and have more shots of that for toys and all this type of stuff. But The Dark Knight Rises takes his time, a bit like Batman Begins. I know, The Dark Knight, he is Batman at that stage, and there's a reason why he would be in the suit straight away, but again, I think it shows a braveness from Christopher Nolan, and Christopher Nolan. I just watched Interstellar last night. Terrific movie, and when he's at it, he's superb, and he usually is on his game. You look at the villain in Bane, an amazingly unique performance, and especially hard to follow up Heath Ledger, who was just superb as the Joker in The Dark Knight. And Bane is a different type of villain, but equally as interesting. And Tom Hardy, even with that strange mask and the strange voice, delivers a very memorable performance. And then you look at the scenes, memorable scenes. When you rewatch a movie, you always think of, well, do I want to rewatch this movie? Is there a lot of stuff that I want to see again? And you look at that plane scene. You look at the the destruction of Gotham scene where they start blowing up the bridges and blowing up the football stadium. Just amazing set pieces and visual shots, which in fairness to them scenes, that was where Christopher Nolan leaned into CGI because he kind of had to, and it worked. And then you look at the pit scene, which is one of my favorite scenes, where Bruce Wayne tries to climb out of the pit and return to save Gotham, and you look at the music that builds that scene and makes it even better. You just goosebumps every time you watch that movie, and especially that scene where he climbs out of the pit. And then the ending, if you go back to the ending of The Dark Knight Rises, to me, I think it's one of the coolest and one of the most satisfying endings ever. I mean, you look at all these awful TV shows that end in such a terrible note. I mean, if you're on my channel, you know how much I hated the Dexter ending. I haven't watched much of Game of Thrones, but I hear it was ended badly. I know this is all subjective, this is all people's opinions, but there is always a sense that it's very hard to get the landing right and end a show or a film series on a right note. And I think The Dark Knight Rises, whatever you think about it, you gotta admit the ending was pretty satisfying and fit the franchise very well. And I find it hard to understand why people don't like it. I mean, I know the film has some plot holes here and there, and kind of, it's maybe a little bit more superhero-y, if that's the right way to describe it, than some of the other Christopher Nolan Batman films. But I think that's what I like about it. I think it reaches a level where Batman has become a character, a symbol. The scale of things are bigger because the villain is more insane, and it becomes a fight to save Gotham, and the action set pieces are bigger at times, but they're never green screen, overuse of green screen. They never jump the shark. You look at that Batwing flying through, I believe it's Chicago they filmed in. I mean, that stuff looks amazing, and again, it's a good showcase of when he does use CGI, it usually works really, really well. So it's interesting. My point of this video was just to talk about The Dark Knight Rises, to look at its critical review, its critical response, which people kind of seem to be actively saying that people didn't like it, or that maybe it was badly received, or maybe the box office wasn't great. But you look back at that stuff, and the box office was really, really good. The critics seem to like it. Why has it become a sort of maligned and kind of talked down movie since? I'm not sure. But I think its legacy will hopefully get better as people kind of look back at it and like it, but it's hard to know. What do you think about The Dark Knight Rises, and have you seen The Batman yet, and did you enjoy it? Thanks for watching, and please subscribe. Thank you.